This is the Guns Magazine podcast, episode number 72. Hi there, and welcome to the Guns Magazine podcast. I'm your host and the editor of Guns Magazine, Brent T. Thanks for joining us as we talk to the interesting people who make up the world of shooting, hunting, and the firearms industry. First, before we get started, let's have a quick chat about our sponsor, Berger Bullets. Berger builds match-grade rifle bullets and ammunition for target, hunting, and tactical shooting applications. Proudly made in Mesa, Arizona, Berger uses the highest quality materials, tooling, and production processes to produce the world's most accurate bullets and ammunition. Berger's unequaled by the competition and has established more long-range world records than all other manufacturers combined. To find out why our nation's elite operators, competitive shooters, and hunters all trust Berger to shoot better, visit your favorite retailer to experience Berger's uncompromising quality or learn more at burgerbullets.com. In today's episode, I talk with longtime firearms industry insider Ray Elgin on the ups and downs of the industry he's seen and where he thinks it's all going. Ray's been part of the executive suite for several gun-related manufacturers, and he's also been a longtime industry consultant. He took a major part in the industry's fight against municipal lawsuits and worked on a national level in the political fight against anti-gun legislation from the Clinton and Obama administrations. Now here's my Back to the Future talk with Ray Elgin. Well, good afternoon, Ray. Thanks for taking our call.
Hey, how are you? Good to talk to you, Brent.
Well, Ray, thanks for talking to us. This week I wanted to talk about kind of the ups and downs, and everybody thinks this is, probably the craziest we've ever seen in the shooting industry. And I wanted to talk to somebody who had a little more perspective about it and has seen what has happened and ups and downs and all that. And your name was brought up. We don't know each other, but it was a pleasure to meet you here just a few minutes ago. And you have actually been called an icon in the industry. So I thought, well, that sounds like a pretty good qualification. I know you've worked for Federal Ammunition for a long time and Leupold, and you've been a marketing consultant and on and on and on and on. But explain just a little bit of the, if you can condense an entire career into just a few seconds, kind of explain what you've done and how you've been part of the industry.
All right. Well, I hopefully won't bore anyone, but I grew up on a cattle ranch in Nebraska and had no intention of getting into this business, but my father died when I was 19 and my brother took over the ranch, and so I worked 45 hours a week in a sporting goods store all the way through graduation. And then the guy that I worked for quit, and the owner asked me to run it, and we were Federal Cartridge's biggest account in Nebraska. And just later on, without a lot of talk, I went to work for them, covering Nebraska, Kansas, and Colorado and Oklahoma, and went on to become regional manager for the southern part of the United States, in Florida to California and as far north as Oklahoma. And they asked me when I started if I would shoot trap, skeet, and sporting clays professionally for them all over the country. And that was along with my other sales duties, which was quite a burden, but I was so excited I couldn't believe it. And
no doubt.
Yeah. I said, let me get this straight. You're going to pay for all of this? He said, yeah, but you got to shoot good. And I made All-American several times, and that's beside the point, but it was very meant a lot to me. And after 14 years with Federal, I went vice president of sales and marketing, came up at Leupold, and the Rifle Scope Company, the greatest in the world. And I went to work for them and moved to Portland, and I was with them. I was there for over 12 years when and I went through all of the lawsuits and everything else under Bill Clinton. But Leupold is a great company, and I was with them for over 12 years, and then I started my own consulting company with shooting sports companies all over the U.S. and all over the world. And that gave my wife and I the opportunity to hunt all over the U.S. and all about, I suppose, 12 different countries worldwide. And she likes to hunt a great deal. And I've often joked about that. I'd be better off getting caught doing something really bad than leave her at home when I went hunting. But when Bill Clinton was president, I was at Leupold, and I was chairman of the American Shooting Sports Council. And New Orleans was the first to file suit against the firearms industry. And there were immediately following, there were 32 more cities and organizations joined the suit. When I was named in the suit as well, I was my name was in the lawsuit because of the ASSC.
Well, lucky you.
And I was served with 5 different depositions around the country, and I'd have to go to those and sit with a camera in my face for 8 to 10 hours, and some of the most ridiculous questions from the opposing attorneys that you ever saw. It was just crazy. And then I also spent a lot of time visiting. This is a big deal in the industry. I mean, the presidents of almost every company that was named in the suit, they were figuratively standing in their hallway with the keys to the business. And if we'd have lost one of those lawsuits, there'd have been approximately 500 more filed immediately.
Wow.
And this was such a big deal that it was terrible. And people in the industry and the board of NSSF and ASSC we were almost having fistfights every day trying to figure out what to do about this. And we had a lot of meetings, and I made the suggestion, and it's not that I'm trying to pat myself on the back, but I said, we can't keep doing a different thing in every situation. We have to go under one law firm, and it has to be a unified effort. And I said, as part of that unification, we will join ASSC with NSSF so that we all have the same motivations in the same direction. And that was finally agreed upon. And we fought it for a couple of years, and it was just incredible. But I also went to see several different mayors that were thinking very strongly about doing it. I went to see Vera Katz in Portland, and Ed Rendell was the mayor of Philadelphia at that time, and they were both less than pleasant. But I have to tell you a quick story. Vera Katz, I was having a very polite meeting with her, although she wasn't polite, I was, and towards the end of the meeting, she said, "Well, how many guns do you have?" And she looked at me personally, and I said, "Vera, I don't know that the number of guns I have is germane to this topic. I'm just talking to you about how much impact you're going to have on your voters. There's tremendous impact." And she said, "Well, I want to know, how many guns do you actually need anyway?" And I said, "Well, Mayor Katz, how many pairs of shoes do you need?" Because she was like Imelda Marcos. She was all over the news with the fetish she had for shoes.
Wow.
that ended the meeting. But I just couldn't help myself. I was getting so tired of her. And Ed Rendell was his natural. I hadn't met him, but he was just his natural arrogant self. But neither one of them entered the lawsuits, so that was a good thing. So.
Yep. Well, you've obviously had your trial by fire, or many trials by fire. So you've seen the industry over the years, and I didn't realize how bad things were when the cities were starting to file lawsuits. I didn't understand how bad that was, but the Obama years, obviously scared a lot of folks. Of this whole history, you've been involved in the industry. Are we at the ultimate moment where things are just as crazy as they've ever been, or is this just another in a long line of dips and valleys in what we do?
I think in some regard we're stronger than we've ever been. In fact, I can say that almost unequivocally. There are more gun owners in America than ever before.
Yep.
And we have about approximately 12 million, that's a guess, but 10 to 12 million first-time ever gun owners. And those people were almost every one of them was a liberal, but they're worried about the riots in the cities and all of that. And they finally went out and bought a gun. And I've talked to a few of these. In fact, I'm related to a few of them that have always been liberal, and but this time they bought a gun. And if somebody starts, in fact, they were, and I've heard other stories where they were surprised that, well, I've heard from Obama you can buy a gun like a loaf of bread. How come I can't take that out of here with me?
Yep.
And it was taking a long time to get the background checks done because there were so many, and we've sold probably 30 million guns approximately. I don't know if that's even an approximate, but guns, we have more guns in the United States than ever owned by citizens, and the ammunition shortage is genuine. They are making ammunition as fast as they can. I know some friends at Leupold that are still there. I mean, at Federal Cartridge that are there, and all the other ammunition companies, and they're building just so much ammunition they can't stand it. They just can't make it any faster, and you can't find it.
Exactly. And what is amazing to me, I understand the mindset, I guess, but I get reader mail all the time. And I was actually, I'll name drop, I was talking to Ed Friedman just 2 days ago. He's the editor of Shooting Illustrated, NRA publication, very well known. And we were commenting, comparing some of our emails that we get that we as an industry, as gun journalists, have tried to explain there's no conspiracy, nobody's hiding anything, and we continue to get these folks, and there's even a few quote unquote journalists, if I can use that term loosely, that I just read a story the other day saying he knows there's a secret bunker in Anoka, Minnesota, where Federal is hiding all of the primers that we can't get. And I don't know what we can. I don't know what we can do to explain to folks. Do the math. You have all these new gun owners, plus the folks that are worried and buying extra. Manufacturers didn't plan on that a year ago, and you just can't produce components out of thin air.
Yeah, and people are buying, instead of buying 4 or 5 boxes like they would like to buy, they're buying 40 or 50 if they get a chance. And sometimes the ammunition pops up like that, and somebody will bring 3 cases of ammunition in their back door of a dealership, and somebody just buys it all right there.
Yep.
And the dealer's not really always going to divvy it out. He wants to sell it and keep things going. But people are buying, instead of buying 5 boxes, they're buying 50 boxes, and now you can't find 50 boxes, but that's what they were doing.
Yep. And I've got a good friend that has to follow this because of his job. And the good news is, we were talking this week, and he said, I've actually seen a few prices on 9mm coming down just a bit from a couple of different dealers. So that's I don't want to get my hopes up, but maybe this great shortage, maybe we finally passed the bell curve and things are going to slow down a little bit.
Well, a young man that I hired at Leupold was just an unbelievable guy, the youngest guy I ever hired. But he is now an executive with Federal Cartridge, and I had a long talk with him the other day and about this, and he said they are finally. He said it's just been a nightmare of the magnitude you can't believe how crazy it's been trying to get all this ammunition moved and divvied out to the wholesalers and the big dealers and all that. But he said, believe it or not, it's finally starting to slack off just a little bit. And he owed me some ammo that I bought like it was about a year ago. And it was some new ammo they came out with. And he said, I'm finally getting it out to you.
Wow.
He said, it's gonna come. And well, not to sound presumptuous, but you would think if he can't get it to one of his best friends in the industry, well, then they're not holding it back from anybody else. He said it's just crazy how it's going.
Going back to just the gun shortage in general, talk about you lived through the great Obama shortages when everybody went out and bought every kind of black rifle part and gun that they could get their hands on. The interesting thing during that period was a lot of manufacturers ramped up as fast and as hard as they could. And when the curve slowed down and the demand wasn't there, some folks even went out of business. And I don't feel like I'm seeing that, but maybe you've got a better pulse on the situation. Are manufacturers doing that this time, or are they just trying to do what they can do with what they've got?
Well, yes and no. So, not all manufacturers are carbon copies of each other.
Sure.
And I'm not privy to exactly how much they're manufacturing, but I probably got a better idea than most people do of what their overall attitude is. But right now, they are at a fever pitch to build as much as they possibly can. And I'm saying that in general, not every single company, because one of the problems we've got in this business right now is that some of the gun companies are run by financial people, and so they're trying to be careful and all that stuff and manage the money. But in general, I mean, the people that I know are making, they're not cutting any corners. They're going as hard as they can.
Yep.
And because it's been going on for years, the ones that held off a little bit at first really bit the bullet on it. But we have almost 20 million more guns out there. They have to eat something.
Yeah.
And they're getting hungry. And the new, I know another couple people that teach classes, shooting classes in beginners up to advanced. And they're so covered up that it's just ridiculous. They can't get everybody into the classes, and so these people are out shooting.
Yep.
They don't just stick a gun in a drawer at home. They're out shooting and learning how to shoot. And then the other thing that happens that I have seen this, I've taught so many people shotgun shooting, especially. You can't find anyone that doesn't enjoy it a great deal.
Exactly.
They just love it. And the other thing is there's so many more women shooters, and women are pretty good shooters. When you start them right out, and you take a man that hasn't shot and a woman that hasn't shot at all, and they don't have, neither one of them have any experience. And I used to even tell the guys that would bring their wives or their girlfriends to my classes that were just beginners, I'd say, I'm telling you guys, you better get ready for it, because the woman's going to outshoot you.
Yep.
At the start, and they will. I think it's partly because they listen more and they don't have this presumption, because I could never find a guy that say he never shot before, but he'd pick up a gun and I'd tell you in 30 seconds whether he'd ever shot before.
Yeah.
But,
every guy thinks he automatically knows how to shoot, drive a stick shift, and paddle a canoe.
Yeah, exactly. I like that.
Going back to, we kind of started with the politics and the ugliness you dealt with in your career. It seems like we're in one of the most dangerous political climates that in my memory, but how does it rank with maybe Obama or Clinton and some of that stuff you went through?
Well, Obama he actually didn't get hardly anything passed. He hated guns, and he didn't want to do it, but he was political enough that he was fairly careful. He got very few gun laws passed.
Mm-hmm.
He was hampered in his efforts by Congress, where the Democrats didn't have a majority for a lot of his terms, and they were afraid of the political backlash. So Obama really didn't get much done on the anti-gun side of it. And in fact, I just was reading today how I was going through a little history just for this call, and he got a lot of backlash from the Democrats for not being more anti-gun.
Yeah.
He passed a couple of them that, the Brady bill requiring a 5-day waiting period to purchase a handgun, and that was overruled and went to the instant background check. And the next year, he passed an assault weapons ban that banned the production of more than 10-round magazines, and or clips, I should say. And Congress got so much heat from it that they voted to overturn it years later, the assault weapons ban and all of that. So Obama didn't get as much done. You remember the ad where they showed Obama out shooting a shotgun? He was supposedly at a skeet shooting range.
Yeah.
Do you remember?
Oh yeah.
As a shotgun instructor primarily, I can tell you that was the first time he had ever shot a shotgun.
Exactly.
He didn't look real comfortable. But they said, no, Obama shoots all the time. There he is. Here's a picture of him shooting. Yeah, uh-huh.
Well, I was just talking to somebody the other day about it, and he said, Obama is absolutely anti-gun, and he would have signed any law that made it to his desk, and it just, the laws never made it to his desk. He was worried about Obamacare and some of that, and it wasn't the highest thing on his priority list. That's where, I can't decide personally where Biden's going to go, because he's certainly not a friend of the Second Amendment, despite the fact he supposedly owns a shotgun. But, the people. On his balcony and shoots it. Yeah. But the people behind him are as left as they get and anti-gun as they get, and now they're pretty emboldened with the House and, the deadlock in the Senate. So, or I always said they wouldn't go real hard initially because there was adults in the room, and they would say there's some pretty significant societal consequences. I think all bets are off now. What do you think? Well,
I think that Biden's got a few problems. First of all, they're going to put him to bed here pretty quick.
Put him back in his basement?
Yeah. He needs a nap.
Yeah.
He hasn't done a single press conference yet. But Biden will be a little more careful than Kamala will. She's just going to go for it all and take over everything she can. But that is going to scare the living heck out of the Democrats and the Republicans both because of that radical agenda that she's got in mind. And, well, let's leave it at Obama, or let's leave it at Biden right now. But he's been a politician all his life, and he knows how dangerous this stuff is with the electorate.
Yep.
And he's going to have a problem. I just don't know what to think about. I mean, if he could take all the guns, he would take them.
Sure.
They would tomorrow. But he understands the ramifications of this. And then, I mean, let's think worst case scenario. Let's say that, I mean, the law enforcement around this area has said publicly that they are not coming door to door to do any of this stuff. They will not confiscate them. And the people that we live up in the mountains here and kind of remote, but the people that I'm real good friends with just aren't, and several of them are retired policemen too, and they just will not turn them over. And they said there aren't any cop that we know that's going to come get them.
Yep.
Get our guns like that. And the other thing is you've got so many of these new, again, these new gun owners. And they're going to say, "What the heck? I just bought this." But I'm not. So they're gonna try. I think they're going to be a little more careful again. But this one is impossible to read because there's so many radicals in there.
Yep.
And I mean, when Kamala Harris gets in, there's no telling what's going to happen.
Yeah.
She'll declare martial law and send them out and shoot people on sight. Well, I don't know.
You made a good point there. I'm a retired police officer, and I obviously stay in a lot of contact with guys still on the job and a lot of retirees. And pretty much across the board, they've all said exactly what you said across the country.
Yep.
And
yep.
And I've got a lot of friends in the military, and they're pretty much the same way. So you start getting into a problem when the folks that enforce the laws are saying, we're just not going to do it. And that's a road that is hard to go down.
Yeah, and a real ugly scenario, but it is possible. They kick a door in and say, "We're going to come get your guns," and they get shot 5 times. That's just going to be horrible. But I mean, what if that happens?
Oh, and will.
It'll happen again.
It will.
And then it'll happen again.
Yep. That's why the cops don't relish the idea, even of the ones I do know that aren't necessarily supportive of the Second Amendment. They don't like the idea of being caught in the middle of that. So it would be an interesting thing. But let's go ahead and move forward from there. With all of your many years of experience and having dealt with all this, what's your crystal ball saying? I'm assuming the pandemic is theoretically going to calm down and all that panic buying from that part of it calms down. But in terms of the political situation, the unrest and all that, is this just 1968 again and we're going to have disco soon? Or what do you think is going to happen?
Well, I've always been extremely involved in politics, and I've always been extremely optimistic. And sometimes I'm wrong, but my optimism tells me that we're going to have it's not going to be nearly as bad as people are saying. It virtually never is. And I've been almost 50 years in this, and it's never been as bad as they say it is. Something can happen, and new laws can come into place that they're using more tyrannical methods all the time because the people are getting tired of it, and so you got to take over the communist way of running a country and say, if we got to kill all you guys, we're going to kill all you. We don't care.
Yeah,
but
you've got to wonder. I do not support what they did at the Capitol, but you got to wonder if the politicians are going, at least that group is real serious, and see what they did in the span of one day. So, again, I'm not saying I support what they did, but it's interesting to note what the level that people are at in terms of their disdain for their rights being infringed upon. So,
exactly.
Interesting time. Very interesting time.
Well, and we had 4 years of Trump where our rights meant something,
mm-hmm.
and people got kind of to enjoying that. I mean, so many people hated Trump that I can't even imagine, but people do like their freedom, and they do like to live as an American, or their feelings of what an American should be like, and we have our rights, and it's never turned out as bad as the people, the naysayers say it's going to be.
Yep.
It never has, ever. And there's been times I've been so worried I could hardly drive down the road. I mean, I was just sick. I was so worried about they were going to do this or do that or whatever. It's never been that. Never been that bad. But sometimes it's gotten pretty close. But yeah. I don't think it will. And I keep coming back to the same thing. There are so many more gun owners out there.
Yeah.
And they are serious. What I am just so pleased about is that there are so many more new first-time ever gun owners. It's not old Charlie that lives down the road that has had 50 guns all his life. It's not him. It's Louise next door that has never owned a gun, never touched a gun, never anything else. And all of a sudden she said, well, wait a minute. I don't want to give my gun up.
Yep. I wasn't going to go down that road, but you've got such a great background of this. I call those folks non-traditional gun owners because let's be honest, the stereotypical active no, that's the wrong word. The stereotypical shooting hobbyist is an old white guy. I mean, we all joke about that. A lot of women shooters, but you know, in the past, it's been an old white guy. Now you have a lot of folks of color, younger, various ethnic backgrounds, and we won't even get into the 462 genders you can declare now. But a lot of those folks are shooting, and part of the problem is how do we get them involved and realizing gun people are pretty cool. We're actually a heck of a lot more welcoming than maybe what the liberal media tell them. And how do we make them involved and active hobbyists?
Well, I think it's happening today on various levels. It's certainly happening here with all the first-time gun owners in our church and in this community around here. But I think they're starting to feel they're surprised at how welcome they're made, and I can't speak for every part of the country, but I can assume that gun owners are being pretty nice to everybody and being receptive of them. What surprises me is how many people that I have a gentleman that I met here. Came up here from California. He's just a great guy, and he said, "What do you do about the sage rats that are out back in they're ground squirrels, but here they call them sage rats?" And I said, "Well, most everybody just shoots them. You know, we all got several acres of land, and we're surrounded by mountains." And he said, "Shoots them? You can't shoot them. What are you talking about?" And he said, "Oh, don't they call the police?" And I said, "Well, if you call the police, two things are going to happen. You're going to wear out your phone, and the police are not going to show up."
Yeah.
And if you're shooting, if you hear somebody shoot sage rats, well, now he owns an AR, and his wife owns a 38, and they're both taking classes and all of that, and that's not just an exception to the rule. That's happening more and more, and is out here a little bit different in the mountainous country. Yeah, it is, but people are tired of this. They're saying, "Doggone it, I'm not misusing this thing, and I feel safer here."
Yep. I
had a conversation with a guy on an airplane one time. Fancy me on an airplane, about 400,000 miles a year. But
wow.
I was sitting next to this guy who was he was a professor at Oregon University, and he's telling me all about his wife and kids and all that. And he said, "Well, that's enough about me." He said, "What are you on, business or pleasure?" And I said, "Well, kind of both. I'm coming back from a hunt." And he blanched very seriously on that. And I said, "Do you not care for hunting?" And he said, "Oh, it's not that." He said, "I just hate guns." He said, "If I had my way, there'd be no more guns in the world." And I let him go on for a little while, and I said, "Can we talk about this?" And he was a nice guy. I mean, but guns just
yeah.
And I said, "You said you've got a wife and your kids." I said, "Can you tell me what's the first thing that you would do if somebody broke into your house and threatened your family?" "Well, I call the police." I said, "Well, I'm sorry, but that doesn't make any sense." He said, "What do you mean that doesn't make any sense?" And I said, "That is going to be a total stranger or a couple total strangers come through your door to protect your family, and they're going to have guns, and you don't know who they are." And I said, "How?" He said, "But our response time is 3.5 minutes. Is 5 minutes." And I said, "Okay, well, let's make it 3.5 minutes." And I said, "Okay, they just broke in your door. And so, when you're looking at the second hand in your watch, you know how long it is for 3.5 minutes? It's just forever.
Yep.
And I said, I'm sorry to say this, but are your children aware that their daddy will not help them? You aren't going to defend your children. You're going to call a total stranger. You're going to say, hide under the bed until that total stranger gets here with a gun, and then he'll protect you.
Wow.
And I said, it's just going to be horrible. And so he got pretty quiet. We got up from the plane when we landed, and he gave me his card, and I gave him my card. And the next day I got an email from him. It said, the subject line was, "You have ruined my life."
Oh.
And I said, oh boy, this is going to be interesting. And I opened it up, and he said, my wife and I sat up till 2:30 this morning talking about what we discussed on the airplane. He said, I'm going to take your advice. I'm going to get extensive training, and my wife's going to get extensive training. We're buying our own guns, and I am going to defend my own family.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. That really honestly happened. I'm not making that up.
Great story. And if you could just get through to all the rest of those anti-gunners, because we know there's literally millions of them, but you really drove it home on a personal level, and I can only imagine his face when you told him that.
Yeah. Well, before that, I asked him, I said, how do you get around town? You got a car, or your wife have a car? Yeah. Well, you realize that cars are statistically far more dangerous than a firearm connected with a household. A car connected with a house is far more dangerous. I said, you should have the police drive you to work and drive your kids to school and all that, because they are trained. They get extensive driver training, but somehow you figured out how to do it yourself.
What a great analogy.
Yeah, but then I got around to asking him if his children realized that, and that really got to him. That got to the heart.
Well, exactly.
But that's what it is. That wasn't exaggerating or doing anything. It was just asking a valid question.
Yep. A great spot to end it on. Some great advice on how to maybe reason with folks that aren't necessarily reasonable when you get started on the conversation. And Ray, it's been wonderful talking to you, and interesting to hear what you've had to say over these many years in the industry.
Well, I hope I didn't let you down on this. I did my best.
Not at all. Well, it was good talking to you.
You too. I appreciate it.
Ray had some great insights, and hopefully he gave you a glimmer of hope that everything will eventually come back around for us shooters. And with that, we hope you're enjoying the Guns Magazine podcast. Please tell all your friends, even those letter to the editor complaining liberals. Guns Magazine was first in the business, and we're using our decades of friendships to bring you the most interesting chats in the gun world. If you've got questions or comments about the show, or even a complaint, please email me. That's editor@gunsmagazine.com. Make sure you don't miss out on anything by subscribing to us on your favorite podcast catcher, YouTube, and of course, at gunsmagazine.com. While you're online, don't forget to check out our great sister publication, American Handgunner Magazine, at americanhandgunner.com. And we'd also appreciate it if you'd share a favorite episode or some kind words on your own social media. And finally, I'd like to remind you to check out our sponsor, the guys and gals who really know accuracy at Berger Bullets. Learn more at bergerbullets.com. That's it for this episode of the Guns Magazine podcast. For the entire staff at FMG Publications, I'm Guns Magazine editor Brent Wheat. Now get out there and get shooting.